The blizzard hit Interstate 80 with the fury of nature unleashed, transforming the highway into a white nightmare where visibility dropped to nearly zero within minutes. Caleb Rivers sat in his 18-wheeler, gripping the steering wheel as snow hammered against his windshield and wind rocked the massive truck at 34. Caleb had been driving long-haul routes for 12 years, ever since his construction business had failed, and he needed steady income to support himself. He was good at what he did, professional and reliable, but the job was lonely. Miles of highway, truck stop meals, sleeping in the cab. It paid the bills, but offered little else. The weather forecast had warned of potential snow, but nothing like this. Within 20 minutes, the highway went from clear to impassable. Caleb could see abandoned cars ahead, vehicles that had slid off the road or simply been left when their drivers realized continuing was suicide. He carefully maneuvered his truck to the shoulder, activating his hazard lights. Better to stop safely and wait out the worst of the storm than to risk jackknifing or crashing. The CB radio crackled with other drivers making similar decisions, everyone hunkering down to ride out the blizzard. Caleb was settling in, preparing for a long wait, when he saw movement through the swirling snow. Someone was out there, walking along the highway. As the figure came closer, Caleb could make out more details. A woman wearing inadequate clothing for the weather, carrying something wrapped in blankets. Before he could decide what to do, there was a knock on his passenger door. Caleb leaned over and looked down to see a young woman with blonde hair plastered to her face by snow and ice, her lips blue with cold. In her arms was a bundle that could only be a baby. Caleb immediately opened the door. "Get in, quickly." The woman climbed into the cab with difficulty, her movements sluggish from cold. She was shivering violently, clutching the bundled baby against her chest. "Thank you," she managed through chattering teeth. "Thank you so much. My car died about a mile back. I've been walking, trying to find help. You were walking in this, with the baby." Caleb couldn't hide his shock. "You could have died, I know, but I couldn't just sit in the car and freeze. I thought if I could reach other vehicles, someone would help." Her accent was refined, educated, completely at odds with her desperate circumstances. Caleb cranked up, the heat in the cab and grabbed the emergency blanket he kept behind his seat. "Here, wrap this around both of you. Let me see the baby." The woman carefully pulled back the blankets to reveal a baby girl, perhaps 8 or 9 months old, with blonde hair and round cheeks. The child was crying softly, and her lips looked dangerously pale. "She's too cold," the woman said, panic rising in her voice. "She's been crying, but now she's barely making sounds." "Is that bad?" "That's bad, isn't it? We need to warm her up, but carefully. Too fast can be dangerous." Caleb had basic first aid training from his years in construction. Hold her against your skin, under your clothes. Your body heat is the safest way to warm her gradually. The woman did as instructed, tucking the baby inside her coat against her chest. "I'm Isabella," she said, "and this is Grace, Caleb Rivers." He reached into his cooler and pulled out a thermos of coffee. "This is still warm. You need to drink some. Get your core temperature up." Isabella drank gratefully, her hand shaking as she held the thermos. As color slowly returned to her face and her shivering decreased, Caleb got a better look at her. She was probably in her late 20s, with delicate features and an elegance that persisted despite her disheveled state. Her clothes, though now wet and ruined, were expensive. The coat was designer, the boots high-end, and she wore jewelry that looked genuinely valuable. "What were you doing out here?" Caleb asked. "This highway isn't exactly residential. Where were you headed?" Isabella hesitated, and Caleb saw calculation flash across her face before she answered. "I was driving to my sister's house. My car just died right as the storm got bad. I couldn't get cell service to call for help." Something about her answer felt off, but Caleb didn't press. She was clearly in trouble, and the specifics could wait until they were all safe. Grace seemed to be warming up, Isabella said, relief evident in her voice. The baby had stopped crying and was making small sounds again, more alert. That's good, but we're going to be stuck here for a while. This storm isn't letting up anytime soon. Caleb glanced at the supplies in his cab. I have some food and water. Not much that's suitable for a baby though. What does she eat? I have formula and bottles in my bag. Isabella gestured to the diaper bag she'd been carrying. If we can warm the water, I can make her a bottle. I have a small camp stove I use for coffee. We can heat water on that. They worked together to prepare a bottle for Grace. The intimate domestic task feeling strange in the cramped space of the truck cab during a blizzard. Caleb found himself noticing details about Isabella, the way she handled Grace with confident competence, the protective way she cradled the baby, the exhaustion in her eyes that went deeper than just the current crisis. How long have you been a mother? Caleb asked as Isabella fed Grace. 8 months. She's my whole world. Isabella looked down at the baby with such love that Caleb felt something twist in his chest. Where's her father? Isabella's expression shuddered. Not in the picture. It's just Grace and me. Caleb recognized walls when he saw them. He had his own, had spent years building barriers between himself and emotional connection. After his business failure and subsequent divorce had left him, feeling like he'd failed at everything that mattered, they sat in comfortable silence for a while. The only sounds, the howling wind, the heating system running, and Grace's contented baby noises as she drank her bottle. Can I ask you something? Isabella said suddenly. Why did you let us in? Most people wouldn't stop for strangers, especially in weather like this, 'cause you needed help. What else was I supposed to do? Many people would have driven past, would have told themselves it wasn't their problem. Then many people are cowards. Caleb shrugged. I am no hero. I just did what anyone decent should do. That's exactly what a hero would say. Isabella smiled slightly. Grace is lucky we found you. I'm lucky we found you. As the hours passed and the storm continued to rage, they talked. Isabella asked about Caleb's life, and he found himself sharing more than he usually did, about his failed business, his divorce, his solitary existence on the road, about feeling like his life had stalled somewhere and he couldn't figure out how to get it moving again. You're not stuck, Isabella said thoughtfully. You're just in transition. There's a difference. Transition to what though? I don't know. But I don't think you're meant to just drive trucks until you retire. You're too thoughtful, too observant. You see people? That's rare. Caleb found himself wanting to know more about this woman who had appeared out of a blizzard with a baby and spoke like she understood existential crisis. What about you? What's your story? Isabella looked away. My story is complicated, and mostly none of my business to share while we're trapped in a truck during a storm. Fair enough. But when this is over, when we're safe and warm somewhere, I'd like to hear it if you're willing to share. We'll see. Round midnight, Grace fell asleep, and shortly after, Isabella's head drooped onto Caleb's shoulder. He carefully shifted to make her more comfortable, letting her sleep while he kept watch. The storm showed no signs of abating, and the temperature was dropping fast. He adjusted the heat and made sure the engine was running efficiently. Knowing they might be here until morning, he found himself studying Isabella's face in the dim light of the cab, wondering about her story, about how someone who dressed in expensive clothes and spoke with refinement ended up stranded on a highway in a blizzard with a baby. Something didn't add up, but he couldn't quite put his finger on what was bothering him. Dawn came eventually, and with it, a gradual lessening of the storm. Emergency crews began clearing the highway, checking on stranded vehicles. When a highway patrol officer knocked on Caleb's door around 8 a.m., Caleb was careful not to wake Isabella as he rolled down the window. Everyone okay in here? The officer asked. Yes. I picked up a stranded woman and her baby last night. Her car died about a mile back. The officer's expression changed, becoming more alert. A woman and a baby. Can you describe her? Caleb did, noting the officer's reaction. Why? What's going on? Sir, I need to see some identification, and I need to speak with the woman. Isabella woke up at the sound of voices, instantly alert, despite having just been sleeping. When she saw the officer, her face went pale. Miss Thornton, the officer said. Ma'am, your family has been looking for you. There's been an Amber Alert issued for you and the baby. An Amber Alert. Caleb turned to Isabella, confused and beginning to feel alarm. What's going on? Isabella's eyes filled with tears. I can explain. Please, just let me explain. The officer was on his radio, calling in their location. Within 20 minutes, multiple police vehicles had arrived, along with an expensive black SUV that Caleb recognized as the kind wealthy people used. A man in his 60s emerged from the SUV, his face a mixture of relief and anger. Isabella, thank God you're safe. And Grace, is she okay? She's fine, Father. We're both fine, Father. So Isabella's last name wasn't what she'd implied, if she'd even given one. Caleb watched the scene unfold, feeling like he'd stepped into a situation far more complicated than a simple, stranded motorist. More details emerged over the next hour as police sorted through the situation. Isabella wasn't a random woman whose car had broken down. She was Isabella Thornton, daughter of Richard Thornton, a billionaire businessman whose family owned half the commercial real estate in 3 states. She had fled the family compound the previous day with Grace, her daughter, because there was a custody dispute with Grace's father, Isabella's ex-fiancé, who happened to be the son of another wealthy family. The ex-fiancé had been pursuing full custody, claiming Isabella was unstable. Isabella had panicked, taken Grace, and run, intending to reach her sister who lived out of state. Her expensive car, a Range Rover, had indeed died in the storm, leaving her stranded. Everything she'd told Caleb was technically true, just with massive omissions about who she actually was. I need to take Isabella and Grace home, Richard Thornton told the officer. We can sort out the rest there. I don't want to go home, Isabella said firmly, still holding Grace. I want to go to my sister's. Isabella, be reasonable. You can't just run away with your daughter. There are legal processes that favor men with money and connections over mothers who actually care for their children. Isabella shot back. I'm not letting Michael take Grace. I won't. Caleb had been standing back, letting the family drama play out. But something about Isabella's desperation moved him to speak up. Excuse me, but doesn't she have a right to go where she wants? She's not under arrest, is she? The officer shook his head. No, sir. The Amber Alert was issued because Mr. Thornton reported his daughter and granddaughter missing. But Miss Thornton is an adult and has custody of her child. She's free to go where she chooses. Then she should be allowed to go to her sister's, Caleb said, if that's what she wants. Richard Thornton looked at Caleb as if really seeing him for the first time. And you are? Caleb Rivers. I'm the truck driver who gave your daughter and granddaughter shelter during the storm. Probably saved their lives, honestly, given how cold it got. Something shifted in Richard's expression. You helped them. I did what anyone should do when they see someone in trouble. Richard studied Caleb for a long moment, then turned to Isabella. Is this true? Did this man help you without knowing who you were or expecting anything in return? Yes, he saved us, Father. He gave us shelter and warmth and kindness when we desperately needed it. He didn't know anything about our family or money. He just helped because it was the right thing to do. Richard nodded slowly. Then perhaps his opinion should carry some weight. Mr. Rivers, may I ask what you think of this situation? Caleb was taken aback. I'm not sure my opinion matters. Humor me. Caleb looked at Isabella, at the desperation and determination in her eyes, at Grace sleeping peacefully in her arms. I think Isabella is a good mother who's terrified of losing her daughter. I think she made a panicked decision that maybe wasn't the smartest way to handle things, but that came from love and fear. And I think forcing her to go somewhere she doesn't want to go, surrounded by people trying to control her decisions, is only going to make things worse. So you think she should go to her sisters? I think she should have support from people she trusts while she figures out the legal aspects of protecting her daughter. If that's her sister, then yes. Richard was quiet for a long moment. Then he surprised everyone by saying, "Fine, I'll drive you to your sister's. And we'll get you the best family law attorney in the country. But Isabella, you can't just run. You have to fight this properly through the legal system. Will you support me? Truly support me?" Isabella asked, tears streaming down her face. Yes, I didn't fully understand how serious things were with Michael, how controlling he'd become. But I see it now. We'll fight for Grace together, properly. Isabella nodded, relief evident on her face. Then she turned to Caleb. "Can we talk for a moment? Privately." They stepped away from the cluster of police and family members standing near Caleb's truck. Grace was awake now, looking around with curious eyes. "I'm sorry I wasn't completely honest with you," Isabella said. "I was scared and didn't know if I could trust anyone. But you helped us anyway without knowing anything about who we were or what we could offer you in return. Just glad you're both safe. Caleb, can I ask you something? What are your plans? Where do you go from here?" "Back on the road, I guess. Continue my route once they clear the highway." "What if there was something different? What if you had an opportunity to do something else?" "I don't understand." Isabella looked back at her father, then at Caleb. "My father owns a logistics company, among other businesses. They're always looking for people with transportation and operations experience. People who are reliable, honest, and capable of making good decisions under pressure. That's you, Caleb." "Isabella, you don't need to do this. I didn't help you, expecting some kind of payback. I know you didn't. That's exactly why I want to do it. You helped a stranger in a storm because it was right. You stood up for someone you barely knew because you saw her fear and believed her. That kind of character is rare. Please, at least consider it. Take my father's card. Call him in a few days. See if there might be an opportunity for something more than just long-haul trucking." Caleb wanted to refuse, wanted to maintain his dignity and not accept what felt like charity. But something in Isabella's eyes stopped him. This wasn't pity. This was genuine gratitude and a desire to help someone who had helped her. "Okay," he said. Taking the business card, Richard approached them, holding out. "I'll consider it." Isabella shifted Grace to one arm and reached out to hug Caleb with the other. "Thank you for everything. You're a good man, Caleb Rivers. Don't let life convince you otherwise, okay?" Then she was gone, loaded into her father's SUV with Grace, driving toward her sister's house and hopefully toward a resolution to her custody situation. Caleb stood in the cleared highway, watching the vehicles disappear, holding a business card that might represent a completely different future. 2 weeks later, after thinking about it constantly, Caleb called the number on the card. He was offered a position managing regional operations for Thornton Logistics, overseeing driver safety and training programs. The salary was triple what he made driving trucks, with benefits and opportunities for advancement. "Why me?" Caleb asked during the interview with Richard Thornton himself. "'Cause my daughter is an excellent judge of character," Richard replied. "She said you helped her without knowing who she was or what you could gain. You showed integrity and compassion in a crisis. Those are qualities I value in my organization. The rest, the skills and knowledge you need, we can teach you. Character can't be taught." Caleb accepted the position, leaving the long-haul trucking behind and moving into a career that offered stability and growth. Over the following months, he stayed in touch with Isabella, who successfully fought for full custody of Grace. After her ex-fiance's controlling behavior was documented and exposed, their friendship deepened gradually, built on mutual respect and genuine affection, rather than rescue fantasies or obligation. Isabella appreciated Caleb's straightforward honesty and lack of pretense. Caleb admired Isabella's strength and determination to protect her daughter, despite the pressures from wealthy, powerful people trying to manipulate her. "Okay, you know," Isabella said one evening as they watched Grace play in Isabella's apartment, "you didn't just save us that night in the storm. You reminded me that goodness still existed in the world, that not everyone had ulterior motives, that I could trust my instincts about people." "You saved yourself," Caleb replied. "You were the one brave enough to walk through a blizzard looking for help. You were the one who fled a bad situation to protect your daughter. I just opened a door." "You did more than open a door. You opened your heart to strangers when you had every reason to be cautious. That matters, Caleb." Their relationship evolved slowly, carefully, both of them aware of the class differences and the complicated circumstances that had brought them together. But love, when it's real, finds a way to overcome obstacles. On the first anniversary of the night they met, Caleb took Isabella and Grace back to that stretch of Interstate 80, now clear and peaceful under summer sun. "This is where you knocked on my truck door," he said, pointing to the spot where he'd been parked. "This is where everything changed for both of us," Isabella added. "I was running from a life that felt suffocating, trying to protect Grace, terrified I'd lose her to someone who wanted control more than connection. And you were driving endless highways, convinced your life had peaked with your failed business, and you had nothing more to offer the world. We were both wrong about ourselves. We were both exactly where we needed to be that night, so we could find each other." They married quietly 6 months later, with only close family and friends present. Grace, now 2 years old, served as flower girl, toddling down the aisle with enthusiastic determination in his vows. Caleb spoke about a blizzard and a knock on a truck door that changed his life. "Isabella, when you appeared out of that storm with Grace in your arms, I thought I was saving you, but you saved me. You reminded me that I had value beyond my failures, that helping others was its own reward, that opening my heart, even when it was scary, was always worth the risk. Thank you for knocking on my door that night. Thank you for trusting a stranger. Thank you for seeing me clearly and believing I was worthy of a chance." Isabella's vows were equally moving. "Caleb, I was running that night from a situation I couldn't control, from people trying to manipulate me, from a fear of losing the most precious thing in my life. You didn't just give me shelter from the storm. You gave me the courage to stop running and start fighting. You showed me that real strength isn't about wealth or power, but about integrity and compassion. You loved Grace before you knew anything about me, that told me everything I needed to know about your character. I love you, and I promise to spend the rest of our lives proving that you made the right choice when you opened that truck door." Years later, they would drive past that stretch of highways sometimes, pointing out to Grace where her mother had knocked on a stranger's truck during a blizzard, where a moment of crisis had become the catalyst for transformation. And they would tell her that the most important thing in life wasn't wealth or status or being from the right family. It was being someone who would stop for a stranger in a storm, who would help without expecting anything in return, who would see people's humanity beyond their circumstances. "Your mom knocked on a truck door," Caleb would tell Grace, "and she wasn't just asking for shelter. She was giving me a chance to be the person I'd forgotten I could be. Sometimes the people we think we're rescuing are actually rescuing us. That's what real connection looks like." Stranded woman with a baby who knocked on his truck turned out to be a billionaire's daughter. But more importantly, she turned out to be exactly who Caleb needed when he needed her most. And he turned out to be exactly who Isabella needed, not someone impressed by her money or status, but someone who saw her fear and desperation and responded with simple human kindness. Sometimes the greatest love stories begin with a knock on a door during a storm. And sometimes discovering who someone really is matters less than discovering who they become when we choose to see them, help them, and build something meaningful together. If this story reminded you that the people we help in crisis often end up helping us in ways we never expected, and that genuine connection transcends class and circumstance, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who has stopped to help a stranger, and subscribe to our channel for more stories about unexpected connections and the power of showing up for others. Leave a comment below about a time when helping someone led to something meaningful, or when you discovered that the people you thought you were rescuing were actually saving you. Your stories remind us all that we are capable of being each other's shelter in the storm, and that sometimes a simple act of opening a door can change everything.